and a lot of good came from it. But I think looking forward, and the advice I always give people is you don't have to make a movie that way, especially not today. Make a movie within your means. Be realistic. You can still make a movie. It's fine. Just don't kill yourself in the process.
Hey, Common Senster, welcome. Today we have a super fantastic show for you. We have one of our veterans with us today, all the way from New York via Zoom. His name is Victor Cruz. He is an actor, comedian, writer, director, producer, acting teacher, father, and husband. We are just so delighted to be able to spend some time with him and get to know who he is, because you guys need to know him if you don't already, which I'm sure most of you already know him. But anyway, I'm doing it again, okay? All right. So, Victor, thank you so much for joining us. So, I want to dig into all the amazing projects that you have done, that you've produced, you've written, you've starred in, that you've done. Because to me, Latino actors have to do more of that. We depend too much on somebody calling us for a job, and most of the times they're not coming. Those jobs are just not coming for us. We're not part of that group that's on the list. There might be three Latino actors on that list, but that's it. It's not open to most of us. And what I love is that you are constantly creating your own projects. So I want to talk about, you mentioned the first thing you produced was a stand-up show so that you could have the time you needed and you could put in the comics that you wanted. I want to talk about what was the first film short you decided to do yourself, and why.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that I'm going to say produced, I didn't direct yet, but I'd written and produced a short sketch called Flaw and Order, which was a spoof on Law and Order. And this was a chance for me to play fun characters. I played this South Bronx girl called Wilda Lopez, which it was fun. I played a detective in it. And what happened was a friend of mine had called me and basically said, I think you're super talented, man. You play all these characters. You should do something with this. And he inspired me so much that night that I literally wrote that first sketch that night. And then I called him right away. I said, dude, I wrote it. Let's make it. And then suddenly I was too fast for him. So, um, anyways, that was the beginnings. I wrote and produced that short, which eventually became a DVD called The Victor Cruz Show, Volume 1. Who is Victor Cruz? At that time, I was really still figuring out who the heck I was. I didn't know. So I
What
think the
year
question,
was that?
that was in 2005
Oh,
is when I
wow, okay.
started. Yeah, 2005, I had started creating that DVD, and in 2006 we released it. And all throughout New York City, I was doing comedy shows, and I was harassing people after the shows to buy the DVD. I'd be holding a whole stack of DVDs in my hands like I was a rapper in the street trying to get you to buy an album. And I would harass people so much that if they loved the show, then they would buy it naturally. But if they thought I was so, they would just buy it so I would shut up and leave them alone. Um, and eventually that sparked interest in me to want to get a little further and direct. And I went ahead and I was watching Yo Soy Boricua by Rosie Perez.
Mm-hmm.
And in that documentary, there was a little short piece about the sterilization of Puerto Rican women. And I'm a big fan of the Twilight Zone and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And I
So i'm
thought,
gonna i'm gonna stop you. Tell us a little bit about that, because that actually was a period in history where Puerto Rican women were sterilized against their will, or without knowing.
yeah, so in 1937, a bill was written, or a bill was signed to make it okay to sterilize women on the island of Puerto Rico. Um, and what they did was it was based off of another method that was being used in the United States, which was called eugenics. It started in 1917, and it was a way of creating what the U.S. thought could be the perfect population, which is to eliminate, and they were targeting women of color, women who were physically disabled, and women who were just financially poor. They thought if they could eliminate those three types of women, that the US would have the very best people. This was the mentality. The church fought it for a while and they won and they stopped this process of eugenics. When I did a lot of my research, what came up was that that actually was the thing that inspired Hitler, in regards to the Holocaust, this idea of a perfect race. So that idea had actually started here and inspired apparently him to do what he did. Now, they had stopped it in the US, but they had started it in Puerto Rico, and they thought that this would be the solution to help the island's financial situation, its current situation with overpopulation. And what they were doing was they had this method and they presented it as if it were for the woman, but a lot of the times they were being sneaky about how this process happened. Sometimes they would ask women, "Did you want to get sterilized after literally giving birth to a child?" And some of them were so out of it or under medication that they were not even conscious enough to make that decision, and they would help them to sign those forms.
Wow.
So,
So then you saw, it caught your attention on this documentary, and
mhm.
what was your process after that?
I saw it, she lightly covered it in her documentary. And I love that documentary because I thought she covered a lot of stuff, but she basically just touched upon it and then moved on. And I said, that's interesting. I didn't know much about it. So I actually went to Centro of Puerto Rican Studies and I sat there for days. They have a lot of resources in New York when it comes to Puerto Ricans, and I learned a great deal about it. And I said to myself, I'm going to make a short narrative about this, and I'm gonna kind of set it up, kind of like a Twilight Zone episode, because I'm gonna mix a little history, but I'm gonna do something that's sci-fi in it, um, to change up the narrative. And yeah, so I wrote a script that was 11 pages long, and it turned out to be a 15-minute narrative. I got some excellent actors to do it. It toured the festivals. It won a couple of awards here and there.
Now, were you just the writer director, or did you, or were you acting in it as well?
I didn't act in it. This is the
Okay.
first time I was just behind the camera, and it was so liberating. No pressure to act. It was just me just enjoying calling the shots, and then obviously then creating a whole new version of that film once I was cutting it. So I really learned how to edit a film during that film. I was cutting that.
What, what? So you learned the process of filmmaking during that piece. What was the big eye opener for you? You know, going into it and then actually doing process and going, oh wait a minute, this is not what I thought.
Well, I wasn't afraid of. I didn't become afraid. Like I have friends who produce shorts who are actors, and they go, "Man, that thing took out so much out of me. I don't think I could ever do that again. It's just too much." For me, I thought to myself, I was like, "What else can I do?" And so it just sparked more hunger in me. Like, what else can I do? And I then created another short that I was actually in called "Congratulations, Mr. Gonzalez," and that one deals with a Puerto Rican actor who goes out to Hollywood, gets a big break, but in the process, something starts to occur to him and who and what he is. And it's pretty groovy. I'm going to share that with you.
Oh, great, great. And are these pieces available so that anybody can watch it?
They're not available to the public because, well, sometimes schools in the past have invited me to show them and to have discussions with the students. So I use them as for that.
Okay,
Really. But once in a while, I make it available for people to watch.
okay,
Sometimes it live.
okay. Now, you also did a stand-up CD slash DVD that you produced yourself.
Yes.
Why?
I wanted to do my own album. I wanted to do an album, and at that point, I was no longer believing that you had to wait on anybody or get a deal. I started finding resources where you could upload your own album, how to produce your own physical CD and DVD. I knew how to hire camera operators. I knew how to edit at this point. I was like, I can kind of do this myself. I don't see why you would need anybody more than you to do this. And so I went for it. I went for it and produced it in East Harlem, at a little spot called FB Lounge, which is not there anymore, but it was an extension of La Fonda, which is
Oh,
over
yes.
106th
Know
Street.
it
So it was
very
right across the
well.
street. And that place was packed, man. That place was so packed. I mean, the owners were very happy. There were people hanging off the ceiling. It was so packed, and it was a really awesome night.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so. When is the evolution of the stockroom?
Yeah, so that album recording happened in 2010, and I had started writing. So when I came out to LA for those 7 months, I wrote the Stockroom while I was in LA. Again, everything is very quiet in LA. I'm kind of new in town, so it's not like I'm going out every single day. I discover a place called the Coffee Bean, and that's where I'm at from the morning to the night with my laptop, and I'm talking to myself in the corner, and I'm creating characters. And yeah, so I written the Stockroom in 2012. When I came back to New York, I was prepared to shoot it in 2013 with no money, but I was trying to raise money, and originally we were trying to raise like 200,000 to make the movie. It was really hard to raise $200,000 to make that movie. I mean, it was just so. I was like growing a beard. I was not
Oh
well
God.
health wise. I wasn't seeing my family. My daughter was just born. And I think my wife just had to sit down with me, like, what the hell? Look at you. I was looking like Tom Hanks in
Wilson.
Castaway.
What,
Me,
yes.
but me and Wilson were there just
Yeah.
trying to make this movie. Uh, so, anyways, I just decided to pull the plug on it. Um, because I have a lot of people in my corner. Like I have a spiritual family and a spiritual teacher who just kind of, she's like, you got to stop. You got to stop and you got to listen and you got to take the time to do it correctly. So in 2014, we shot the movie and we ended up shooting between in-kind sponsorships and actual physical money. Like I used my own money and some of it we raised. It probably ended up costing us about $62,000 to pay for everything. That was probably my film school. I learned how to direct and edit with the shorter projects, but this was my film school because I got my ass kicked on so many levels. I really put myself to the ringer. I wasn't sleeping. I just it was a tough time, and I didn't give up. I didn't give up. I kept making the movie, and a lot of good came from it. But I think looking forward, and the advice I always give people is you don't have to make a movie that way, especially not today. Make a movie within your means. Be realistic. You can still make a movie. It's fine. Just don't kill yourself in the process.
So, something you said made me think about this because as I was prepping for this interview, I was thinking about your work ethic. And you can't create a lot of content if you don't have a good work ethic. Can you share some of your work ethic with us?
Yeah, my my work ethic today is better than it was before, but what happens with me is that once I start producing something, once I start creating something, I won't I'll make it all the way to the end. I don't quit, I don't stop because now at this point I'm so invested. I've already invested a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and and a lot of people in the process are also helping me too. And it's not that I don't want to let them down. I also don't want to let myself down. And without putting that into words, because sometimes I don't say that out loud, but I think if I think about it, I'm saying I can't let myself down. I know that I have it in me to finish this project, and so I'll finish it. But the way that I work now, to answer your question, the way that I work now is I do a lot of research. I take the time to understand what goes into a particular thing or particular project. And then I just look and see if I can fulfill that, if it's realistic within my own means and with my time.
So you're counting the cost before you make the investment.
For sure, for sure. I'm not going to sacrifice the things that I need to provide for my family. Um, but I still am going to take a risk on myself. It's just a little bit more calculated today.